Welcome, everyone. My name is Christine Dyckman. I'm from the Monmouth County Workforce Development Office, and today we're presenting our guest speaker on ageism in the job search, Lisa Rangel. Now, Lisa is awesome. She is an expert. She is a recruiter. She has zigged and she has zagged, and she's had quite a few careers in quite a few industries, just like me and just like a lot of you attending today. She is the founder and CEO of Chameleon Resumes. She's the premier executive resume writer, working for the firm that she created, and joblandingacademy.com. It's the do-it-yourself career portal. So definitely take note if you're interested in doing any of that. I am on Lisa's list for newsletters, and they are so motivational and inspiring. So thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate that. But you never know who you're going to meet. So definitely connect, find inspiration, maybe even share some of her words of wisdom. She's a mom. She has a 4-step M.E.T.A job landing systems, M.E.T.A. What is that all about? Oh, no. Right? She's going to tell us a little bit more about that. She has successfully placed clients in 88 plus countries and been featured and quoted in over 200 publications. I would think she's an expert. So you want to take a note and listen to what Lisa is saying today. Take it away, Lisa.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Christine. I'm really excited to be here. Again, I'm Lisa Rangel with Chameleon Resumes and Job Landing Academy. The newsletter that Christine referenced, I put the link to it in the chat. It is a daily email, so know that it will come out every day, but you can unsubscribe at any time. So there's no hard feelings, but you can access that there. And Job Landing Academy is joblandingacademy.com. So I saw somebody ask that question. I'm going to encourage everyone to sort of follow Chuck's lead. I don't know if everyone saw Chuck's initiative and putting a question in there. I would love to see some questions if you can outline to me what you would hope to get out of today. Like if there's one question or one problem that you're running into, or that you have some struggles with that you're hoping to get out of today and in being here, because this way then we can talk about them. So, I'm going to give you a couple of pointers that I think are some of the basics with regards to overcoming ageism in the job search. And then what I really want to do is just field your questions. So thank you, Chuck, for taking the lead. I don't see you here on my screen because I know there's so many of you. So I just want to say thank you. And I encourage each of you to do that. So this way, again, it'll just be more of a dialogue. So a couple of pointers that basics that I just want to cover with you is one of the first things that I see people who tend to find that themselves struggling with ageism was when I often look at their resume or their profile or both. They tend to be leading with seniority, or they tend to be, focused and promoting the fact that they have a number of years of experience. So they're going with seniority. And so if you start your resume or your profile, or you just have this language weaved in there anywhere, is, over 25 years of experience, or I'm a seasoned, professional or a seasoned executive. If you're leading with age as your main qualifier, I'm going to tell you, don't blame age for being used against you then. You know what I'm saying? So you can't use seniority as your qualifier and then be disappointed if someone wrongfully, don't get me wrong, it's always wrong, but if we're dealing with human beings, and human beings do flawed things, like assume factor pieces or factor items into a decision that shouldn't be used into a decision, right? So what do you use then? Use your achievements. Use your recent relevant achievements. Achievements are ageless. Leave the word seasoned to talk about your French fries. That's, what I always think of when I hear seasoned. So I never want to hear seasoned. And unless I'm talking about my French fries. And And don't lead with 30 years of experience or 20 years of experience, which I think I just saw in the chat. Somebody put, what do I do? Do I allude to my 30 years of experience? So I'm going to say no. I think that was, is that Vanessa who's behind the Mr. E? Did I catch that in the beginning correctly? Vanessa's question, if it is Vanessa.
No, it's Melanie. Melanie.
Oh, Melanie, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to
Vanessa.
figure out how to change this.
So if don't worry, there's a 3-dot box that I think if you click on, right click on, you're able to change it, but
oh, okay.
But if not, no worries. I know now it's Melanie. So although that could be your new moniker for looking, yes. That's one way to stay noticed, right? You know,
well, Lisa, if she's got 30 years experience, I know that we don't lead with that. So where do you take 30 years off of the resume then? Or how does that present?
I typically don't go back more than 15 to 20 years on the resume.
Okay.
And
I leave on because early in my career, I had worked at the Star Ledger for a number of years, and then I became self-employed, but I feel like it's pertinent, you know, qualifications, but it does go back, like, you know.
I think, you know, that's the thing. It's hard to do like individualized type of advice in situations like this, but I mean, generally speaking, I don't go back more than 15 to 20 years. You know, if you're self-employed and, you know, the added employer work experience is over 20 years ago, then, you know, you can set up your document to highlight the clients that you've worked for, the client work that you've worked for, contract assignments that you've worked for, and within the 15 to 20 years, and focus on that. Because when you focus on either a company that, you know, what any of us did, and I say any of us, I'm 51, going to be 52 in May. You know, what I did in, you know, when I was 22 is not going to factor into qualifying me for a job now. I was in the hotel business when I was 22. I went to Cornell, I went to the hotel school. I graduated and I worked for Four Seasons for 3 years and Pebble Beach for 3 years. Even if I wanted to go back into hospitality today, I would focus on transferable skills of the work that I'm doing now and how it shows that I am qualified to be in hospitality now. And I would not necessarily show that, you know, I worked in a restaurant, you know, at the Four Seasons Hotel in San Francisco, because that hotel doesn't even exist anymore. Because the way restaurants run 25 years ago are different than the way they run now. So, you know, the first thing someone's going to say when they're employed, when they're an employer, and I'm saying, oh, hire me for hospitality because I worked there 25 years ago, they're gonna be like, well, it's different now. You know, it's almost a completely different job despite being the same job, you know? And so you're gonna be more effective if you focus on recent relevant experience to show why, or transferable experience if you're doing a career change, than trying to say, I did this, you know, 30 years ago, you should hire me today for that. It's just not relevant anymore, you know, typically, right, in a general sense. So there's exceptions to every rule, you know, like an exception sometimes where I will list an employer that's over 20 years is, you know, if they're a CPA and they worked for, you know, one of the big 8 at the time, now it's big 4, you know, it shows their upbringing, it shows the caliber of their training. You know, I might put that somebody worked at Coopers and Lybrand 30 years ago, even though that doesn't exist anymore. But because it shows, again, the caliber of their accounting upbringing.
So with that said, with the
generally
caliber,
speaking, it's not relevant, you know.
So would you, if you're applying for a job within the same company, the company knows the training you've gone through. So would you then state that you've been there for 30 years, 20 years because it's the same company, or not?
So if I understood the question, if you're
applying for company, a job in the same organization.
So, I mean, look, if you're applying for a promotion, essentially, right? Is that what
that's what I'm reading.
If you're applying for the promotion, oh, there we go. Okay. You know, you want to make sure whatever you put on your resume when you applied is It's, it's not changing, right? I mean, you rank file serial number type information should always be the same, but you still want to focus on recent relevant achievements. And this also speaks to Chuck's, one of Chuck's questions about what do you pick for, what achievements do you pick? In a general sense, recent relevant achievement. So something that you're proud of, if it's not relevant, I absolutely would not use it, even if it was, 2 weeks ago. And then if it's relevant, try to determine if it's recent and prioritize recent over, older achievements. But I have some things in my background that I'm extremely proud of that for certain jobs are not relevant. So again, this document, the resume and the profile are meant to get you the interview. That doesn't mean you won't talk about that thing you're proud of on the interview, but it's the document, the resume and the profile's purpose is to land you an interview, to land you a conversation. And if you're pontificating about things that you're proud of that are not going to be relevant to the reader, they're not going to want to call you. I always try to use an example, and I say this with the context of, being married 26 years, and in September, so I haven't been on the market in a while, but I remember being at a bar and, or just in any scenario where you're trying to meet somebody, and like somebody that's like talking at me with things that are important to them, but aren't really relevant to me. And then they see that I'm not interested and they kind of keep talking to try harder to show me how awesome they are. It kind of just makes you want to back away, right? Like insert Homer Simpson meme here, right? Backing into the bushes. Like that's what's happening. A lot of us are trying too hard to show how awesome we are. And we're trying to overprove why somebody should talk to us. And we're using evidence that isn't recent or in most cases relevant. This is a marketing exercise. Your audience that you're trying to attract is that hiring manager or that person you're networking with. You have to lead with what will be interesting to them. Not what satisfies your ego, if I can.
So we do have a question in the chat box, and I wonder how you would answer this. In an online world, I suspect many recruiters are worried about how this old guy will fit into our culture. Any ideas on how to combat that?
So that's a great question. And it also couples with, I think, Chuck's original question, which, how do you, when you feel like your network is aged out, how do you network, or how do you get, the young people to feel like you're not, ancient, right? And feel like you'll fit in. This, first of all, you're not alone in this sentiment. Like I had a client a few years ago, literally bluntly put to me, and I anonymously credit him with the title of this little booklet that I have that's a little bit out of print now. I haven't updated it, so I don't have it out there, but the title of it is How to Network When Your Network is Retired or Dead, because that's exactly what he said to me. He said, how do I network when my network is retired or dead? And, funny, not funny, but you have to start talking to people that are younger than you. So do an audit of your LinkedIn connections. Do an audit of your address book, right? Your contact list. Does everyone look like you? Right? And this just doesn't even go with the age demographic. Like it means it's every demographic, right? If you're male, is it mostly male? If you're, gay, is it mostly gay? If you're African-American, is it mostly African-American? If you're white, is it mostly white? Is it women? If you're a woman, is it mostly women? Like make a deliberate effort to seek people out different than you.
Is that in the same industry or different industries? That's
another thing, right? So it's not only just, demographics, but also profession. It's also industry. If you're in IT, do you have only IT people in your background? What about talking to some marketing people and coming up with the idea that you understand how IT supports marketing and marketing support IT, right? So look for differences of opinion, look for differences of experience, and, and it's a deliberate effort. It's not just going to happen, because I think most of us, tend to gravitate with what we're comfortable with. We tend to gravitate towards, what's like us in many ways, right? We seek out communities that support what we do and think, and that's not a bad thing. But if you're feeling isolated, people hire people they know, people they like, people they trust, people they're introduced to. And if you are not in those circles because you've aged out, so to speak, well, then you have to purposefully put yourself in those circles. You know, like about 2-3 years ago, right before COVID, actually, about a year before COVID, I mean, I do a lot of email marketing, and I went to a conference. It was led by a 29-year-old email marketing genius, and I paid him my money, and I sat in that room, and I was in a room with 15 people, and I was the only female and definitely the oldest person by about 15 years, at least, if not more. And I learned a lot, you know, and I shut my mouth and I listened, and I literally went to learn. And occasionally they'd want the person who's been in business perspective a while, and I'd offer it, but I wasn't lecturing. I wasn't saying, well, you know, you don't know this, or, you know, and they had something to offer me that I paid money for to learn. So I think if we can reach out to people in our networks that are different than us and seek what they have to say, and not necessarily come in from a place of teaching or training or mentoring or lecturing, but that we are the student, that in and of itself sends a message that we're open to, it's intergenerational communication. And I ask the same question of younger job seekers when because I'm going to tell you, they say the same thing. Well, nobody's giving me a chance because I don't know a lot of older people who can get me into the hiring manager roles, who can get me into hiring managers, you know, purview. And I'll say, besides like your friend's parents, like how many people do you know on your own that are 20 years older than you? Like, go seek them out, you know, and don't just seek out them for mentorship. Don't just take, right? Like, make sure that you're offering value also. And that's what I suggest to all of you, is to seek out differences in perspective.
I think that one of your newsletters, I don't even know which one it was, Lisa, and I think it was in January, you had stated that you set a goal for yourself for 2021 to meet one new person every month.
Yes.
And you exceeded that just by talking to people. And with that, you were able to build up a lot of new connections and new perspectives on what is happening in all these different industries for job search. And that allowed you to be even better than you are.
I actually did it for every week. And,
yes,
you know,
yes.
And, you know, some other things that, you know, join groups that are labeled, you know, related to your industry or your profession, and then, you know, volunteer for like a membership committee. So now you're talking to new people whenever they come in, or you can just set up, hey, I'm a member of the blankety blank. I'm a new member of the blankety blank. I would love to have a chat with you. You send 10 of those out and 3 people set up a chat with you, you're winning. Don't worry about the 7 that didn't respond. Just worry about the 3 that did, and then go do another 10. You know, focus on what's coming back, focus on what's coming in. And, you know, but the key is it has to be a deliberate effort. And, you know, if you haven't been maintaining a diversified network up till now, it's okay. You can start today. You literally can start today. And, you know, you can start by asking your current network, who do you know that is just starting out in X that I can maybe have a conversation with so I can learn what they're experiencing. You can look on LinkedIn for more vocal, prolific type of posters, and start commenting on their posts. And then maybe after a short period of time of some meaningful post dialogue, you can message them and say, hey, I really enjoy what you say. I would love for you to, you know, be able to chat with me just so I can learn more about your perspective and how I can help you, and maybe we can help each other, and just keep it really light and easy. And I would encourage each of you to sign up for a free calendar function, either Acuity or Calendly, Time Trade. There's a whole bunch of them out there. And you can send like, here's my calendar, or you can send me your calendar, whatever is easier for you. You know, because
I love that. I love those ideas.
Some people are put off if they have to give out their calendar, and some people want the control of, you know, having your calendar. So I, you know, the whole calendar power thing, I don't even play with it anymore. I'm just like, I literally give people options like, here's my calendar link. If you prefer to give me yours, send me yours, or send me some times that work for you. Whatever's easiest for you.
I
That's it.
think that's catching on definitely with a lot of different industries that everyone's got that. So
Yeah.
it does
And
make it so much easier.
And that's a subtle way to show that you're modern, right? That you're using modern tools. And it's,
Exactly.
you know, like I've just, you know, a lot of things that get labeled as ageism, in my opinion, aren't ageism, you know, and the good news is, I mean, look, ageism is always wrong, right? It's never right. But in my opinion, it's where someone is genuinely qualified for a job, they go through a process, and the company continually chooses the person who is younger, even if the pay is equal, right? Because somebody being paid more versus somebody paid less, that's not necessarily ageism. To me, that's economics, right? I think if people are willing to take the same amount and they constantly pick the younger person, that's ageism. But if the older person happens to want more money and they pick somebody who happens to be younger but is also less expensive, I mean, everybody here goes to Walmart, right? We're not going to, you know, everybody wants to pay least if they can, right? So part of that's economics, that's not ageism. But I would caution you to be careful of labeling things ageism without lack of, if you have a lack of evidence, because all you're doing is hurting yourself. You know, so in absence of information, in absence of evidence, do not label it the thing you have absolutely no control over.
I love that.
Because then you're just hurting yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? And, you know, that's the key, right? So but if you can at least look at the things you can control, right? Using modern technology. You know, I just taught myself Canva like 3-4 months ago. You know, I couldn't really find someone to do social media things the way I wanted to do it. And so I was like, all right, screw it, I'm gonna go learn Canva. And I just taught myself Canva. And, you know, I'm slow stuff. Sometimes I put the stuff up and I'm like, everybody knows I did that myself. And, you know, okay, you know, I detested video for the ages, like literally for ages. Everybody's like, you should do video. I'm like, I hate video. And if you look at my YouTube channel and go to the first video I did in 2018, I mean, I was off. I was not energetic. You know, because I'm from, you know, Jersey City, New York area, I wore black, you know, and I had black and dark makeup on. And I was just, and finally, like after like 2 or 3 of those sessions where I was just like, you know, like goth career girl, I had a really good friend of mine who I've hired as a coach for a number of years. She called me. She's like, all right, girl, I love you, but I'm going to tell you, you need a makeover for video. I'm like, okay. And I did. And I went and got the makeover. And, you know, I'm not a girly girl. And, you know, but I got a routine that takes me like 10 minutes. And I know like 5 colors that I look good in. And I just put on the shirt and I put on the makeup and I'm done in 10 minutes. And that's it. And it doesn't make me look tired, right? It's not about looking old. It's about looking like just not energetic, right? And
so Christine says soft skills are what the seasoned employee has the best experience with in today's job search. When you're talking about video, when you're talking about all of these soft skills, how do you portray what you have or bringing to the table soft skill wise in your LinkedIn, in your resume, that kind of thing?
I think you demonstrate your soft skills on LinkedIn by commenting and interacting with people. You know, it's hard to say I have these soft skills like in a static, you know, manner, but you know, getting recommendations, because now people are testifying that they've worked with you, and and quality of recommendations, like not just people like, no offense to the networking group, but just not like, oh, I'm in a networking group with them and they're great. But it's like, I've worked with her, I've worked with him. This is the project we worked on together. If you worked on a project together during the networking group, that's fine. But just like, it comes back to the quality of things, right? Just take the time to do the quality of things. Take the time to have a conversation with somebody and just simply be curious and see what you can learn from them. You know, you know, to get back to some of these questions, Joe has a great question here. Joseph has a great question here.
Yes.
what, you know, aren't you overqualified for this position? So what they're concerned about, look, that's always a crappy question, right? It's never a good question, but what are they really worried about when they're asking that, right? Possibly, and I'm making assumptions here, and I'm going to do this in 2 minutes. They're worried that you're going to, if it's the person you're going to work for and not just an HR person, they might be worried that you're going to upstage them, right? They're worried that you're going to take their job or want their job or feel threatened. So make them feel that you're going to help them, not in a, you know, older person, you know, teaching you kind of way, but just, look, I've been in a position of management. I don't want to do it anymore. I know what it's like to have good support from a team, and I want to be that now for somebody, you know, and this is where my interest lies. And so, so instead of being offended by the question, and I'm not saying you are offended, I'm just saying in general, and you can be offended, I can't tell you how to feel, but think of why they might be asking it, right? They're either, so that's reason number one. Another reason is they're afraid you're going to be bored. They're afraid you're going to take it and leave after they've just trained you and wasted resources. You know, if you leave, they're wasted if you leave, obviously. So you need to reassure them that you are looking for this particular job, and, you know, and that you're not. And even if, look, let's face it, we all need to work. Sometimes you are going to take something less just to work, right? But then your job is to convince them that you're not, even if you might. So instead of it being viewed as, and that is a legitimate concern, training dollars and time are expensive. So you need to make sure that they are reassured that that's not what you're going to do. So these are just some of the things that, you know, I ask all of you, when you were 30, you know, 30, 35, and I'm not assuming everyone here is over 50 or over 40, but just, I think it is a majority based on the topic. Year-olds did you hire? Right? Usually the answer most people give me is 0 or single digits. And think of that person when you're interviewing. How would you have wanted somebody to make you comfortable if you were interviewing a 50-year-old at 30 years old? So that, again, comes back to, this is a marketing exercise, right? Know your audience and deliver the message accordingly. And, you know, that's going to vary from case to case, right? But that's the key, is just try to put yourself in that person's shoes, and you understand better by talking to other 30-year-olds. So, you know, I see here, I can't see the name because it's a long question, Cindy, you know, and I'm totally glancing at this, so I may miss something here. I have an interview with somebody who's about 35 years younger. I would start talking to people that are 35 years younger than you and saying, what would you want to hear from me? Like, start to do your market research, right? Start to understand that if especially those of you in marketing here, this is if you were going to launch a new product or a new service, you'd want to know who the audience is, and then you would do some market, you know, research on that audience and then come up with your message. Well, that's exactly what this is.
Cindy has a question.
Yes.
And it's a rather long one, but
yeah,
I think it's very important because she's supposedly overqualified for some positions. And, you know, Cindy feels as long as I can learn something new and be challenged, it's a good position. At this point, this is the type of position that best suits my life. So during the interview process, I'm told we usually hire leaders from our training program, blah, blah, blah. How do I counter that? What do I say in response to what they're saying in the interview?
So you mentioned here, as long as I feel like I can learn something new and be challenged, it's a good position. They may feel insecure that they're not going to teach you anything new and you will be bored. So that's where the connection needs to be made somehow. You need to unearth from them what is new for you to learn, and then they need to feel confident that they can still teach you, right? So, because if they are feeling like, I'm not going to be able to teach her, she's going to be bored out of her mind in this job, that's their insecurity, right? It may not be fair, but that's the reality. So that's the job ahead of you. Is, you know, it fits your life and that's all great, but they want to know that they can engage you and that you are not going to be bored, and it might be their own insecurity. So that's the goal right there. That's where you have to make the connection. They need to understand that they can teach you something, and you need to convey that something can be still taught and that what that is. So because
So you have to be an expert and at the same time be, okay, you can teach me something?
teachable and coachable,
Okay.
and
Or
that's with
their
everything
systems and
though.
methods.
Yeah, I mean, that's with anything though. That's ageless to me. That's ageless, and I think that because I'm going to tell you, I have clients older clients, senior level clients that send me their adult children, and they're saying the same things. They're like, oh, nobody's giving me a chance. Oh, they're already hiring people that have experience. I don't have the experience. How am I supposed to get the experience if I don't have the experience? That whole cycle that they're chicken or the egg. So I'm just telling you that everyone has an ism that they're dealing with. And ageism also happens at the younger level too, right? Where people just get assumed they don't know anything because they're young. And we all know people with 30 years of experience who can't work themselves out of a paper bag. And we also know people with 5 years of experience who can't work themselves out of a paper bag. So age and seniority does not qualify you for a job, right? So don't lead with it. The key is to lead with what your experience is, recent relevant achievements, because at any age, that's what matters. And that's the key, I think, in dealing with ageism. But we are always going to have an ism, right? I don't want to sound negative when I say this, but the reality is we're dealing with humans. We're never going to be bias free. And so I think the key sometimes is to just accept that it happens and know that we have to do our best, to counter it. And the first step, in my opinion, is just not to always assume it's happening. Because how hard is it to get up in the morning and send an email or make a phone call when you automatically think everything that's going against you is because of ageism, something you can't control? I mean, that's just hard to get up out of bed, right? So, and we don't have the proof, right? It could be that, you're mentioning things that are outdated technologies, right? I mean, you could be the way you're communicating. It could be that you're sending really long cover letters and people don't want to read them because everybody's got like a 6-second, time span, attention span. It could be that you're leading with, I have over 30 years of experience. And they're like, next, and that's not right, but I'm just telling you, right? Don't lead with the chin. So
Bill asks, is it legal for an employer to ask you, isn't the salary too low for you based on your previous experience? They're not asking you what your previous salary was, but they're asking you in a roundabout way.
I mean, again, there's nothing illegal about asking this. They're saying based on your experience, we should be paying you more, but we can't. They're being clear. Right? So again, what would be the reason why they're asking that question? My guess is if I'm paying you too low, you'll take this as a stepping stone and you're going to leave as soon as something better comes along because you actually look like you have some good experience. So why wouldn't you get paid more? It's actually a compliment on some level because they think that you're going to leave. What? I mean, they think you're going to leave.
Yeah.
Right? They think you're actually worth more. They're like, why are you taking this? They need to understand why you won't leave because it doesn't make sense to them. Employers, let me think of it this way. I think, I'm going to assume some of you have been in positions of hiring before. And, even if you've hired for your homes, right? Like whether you rent or you own, you had to maybe hire a plumber so it doesn't even have to be a formal. I'm sure somebody has hired somebody. Everybody's hired somebody at some point in life. If you can afford to pay somebody, $100 for a project, would you rather give that $100 to somebody who would be really excited to get 75? Or would you rather give that 100 to somebody who would prefer 200 but will settle for 100? People want to hire people who are excited, right? So if you can make someone really happy by giving them 100 when they expected 75, and they're equally or 75% of the way qualified to the job. It's harder to give somebody that 100 who would prefer 200 because you're already going into the relationship thinking this person's going to disappoint.
So does that mean that when we go into an interview, we should lowball ourselves?
No. It just means
Just
if
asking.
they don't have a high budget for paying you and you don't want to take that amount, it's not ageism, it's economics, right? Or if they ask, isn't this too low based on your salary, your experience level? They know the market should be paying you more and they don't have it, right? So they're just acknowledging, like, are you going to be disappointed if I give you this? You know, it's not ageism. It's making sure you're there. It's this whole supply and demand thing and making sure that you're happy. They want to make sure that you're happy.
I thought we were going to talk about resumes and ageism in the hiring process, not about happiness. So basically, we need to be a human thesaurus, as I've always said. You have to find that common ground using their words and lingo to make them understand so that you can get the job.
Audrey just had a really great question.
Yes.
If I can answer one more.
Yes,
you guys
please.
have so many good questions. So what do you say when somebody asks you what year you graduated? You know, I mean, I would say, why is it relevant? You know, I mean, you can call people out, right? And if it doesn't make you get the job, then it doesn't make you get the job. You know, you can say, like, I graduated. What relevance does the year have? What is the reason you're looking for that maybe I can address another way? Because we both know the year I graduated isn't really pertinent. The fact is that I did, and here was my major, and what do you want it to speak to? Let me address that.
Love that answer.
So, I mean, and you could say it with a big smile on your face, right?
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, so, and you're not going to win everybody over, you know, and while it's 100% wrong for them to be asking sometimes these questions, it's sometimes poor training. And again, none of this is an excuse, but again, it just prevents you from saying, oh, they're doing it to me. They're doing it. Go ahead, Audrey, sorry.
Can you hear me? I was so shocked when she asked. It threw me for a loop. I didn't know what to say.
So, you know what? Now you're going to have an answer. Another way to do it is you can say, you know, not 2005. Right? Like, I mean, you can make a little joke out of it, like, you know, or ask them, you know, and when they tell you, you know, I graduated in 2013, you say, well, I didn't graduate that year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's get to the real root of the question. You know, like, what are you concerned about? What can I answer? Just make them laugh, make them blush a little.
I always feel like you shouldn't call, like, if someone's interviewing you, like, to call them out on something, that's not my comfort zone.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, you don't have to be nasty about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you can practice it, you know, like, so what year did you graduate? And let them tell you, thinking that, well, that means you'll have to say, well, I didn't graduate that year. I think we can both agree on that. So let's get to the real reason of why we're here. You know, like, how am I qualified? And I'm not sure how my year of graduation is relevant to that. I can tell you I graduated, and here's how I'm involved with my college, and here's how I'm blah, 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 blah. So let's get to the reason why you're asking. How do you want me to? Yeah, not yesterday. I like Christine's answer. Not yesterday.
I think that spinning it with that comedy question,
you got to make them laugh a little.
Definitely making them feel a little less intimidated, a little less confrontational about that. Absolutely.
And look, ultimately, if they don't laugh about it, right? I mean, you can just say the truth, and then they're going to make decisions possibly, right? So at some point, I mean, and you know, maybe this is wrong. I don't know, maybe I've just developed too thick of a skin from working in Wall Street, and, you know, as a recruiter in the late 90s with, like, mostly men. You know, nothing was fair and everything was fair game. And, you know, if they're gonna treat you that poorly from the start, even if it's wrong, you know that it's not going to change once you get there, right? So, you know, and let's face it, you know, other demographics have been dealing with this for years, decades, right? Centuries, right? So now, if anything, we have this all in common, right? So if anything, let it grow your empathy, and, you know, realize sometimes it's not going to be fair. And then, but again, just control what you can control, right? And it's, you know, it's, I don't mean it as a blame the victim thing, or we're not supposed to manage up, or, you know, all that stuff. But the reality is that does exist sometimes. And so, but we can do better. We can speak to how we're qualified in an achievement-like manner. And that's truly what matters, right? We can engage technology in a you know, more modern way. You know, we can do the uncomfortable things, you know, like I'm not even kidding you when I tell you how I white knuckle doing videos 3 years ago, you know, and I started writing an email a day in 2015. I've written an email a day since then. And the email a day thing was an absolute response to putting off doing video. Because I'm like, well, I can write. I mean, that's how deep rooted my aversion to video was, that I actually wrote an email a day to market my business. So like, that was deep. So,
I totally understand. And I actually agree with you, Lisa.
I mean, I'm like, I can write anything.
You know, we're talking about video.
Like, I'm not a newscaster
but
girl.
it's
Like,
not quite the same. And
I got
so
Jersey slang,
get
you
it.
know, I'm not, you know, I mean, I'm an Ivy League graduate, but you wouldn't know it sometimes, right? So it's just, you know, and so, you know, it's just, you just have to be authentically you, but, you know, take the constructive feedback of how to make authentically you just digestible to the world, but in a way that you're not compromising yourself.
So Lisa, Chuck had asked in the chat box, is it fair to ask a potential employer if the pay for a position is above or below a certain threshold?
I mean, you can ask what's the pay range for the position. I would say that is probably more acceptable.
The
I don't
pay
know
rate
about,
or the pay range?
I would say range. I would ask for a range. And if you're asked what you're looking for, I would give a range.
Okay.
And that lower part of the range should be something you absolutely will accept and be happy at. And if
Joe asks, some professionals have told me not to include any dates on my resume at all.
That is the worst advice ever.
Other professionals told me that if you do not include dates on your resume, prospective employer may think you're hiding something. So your opinion is to put them on?
So here's the thing. So when you don't, functional resumes, not putting dates on resumes, you know, burying things, like all it does, an experienced recruiter looks at a resume, a hiring manager, and they look at your name, they look at the title of what you're going for at the top of the resume, or trying to get that vibe of what type of job you're going for. They look at your current employer or most recent employer, how long you've been there, the job you had, to see that if that sort of is a little bit of a fit of the job they're hiring for, right? And motivates them to keep reading. And then they look at where you went to school. That's literally the first thing that happens before then they decide mentally to dive in further and or email you for an interview. So now if you take away the dates, first thing they go is, well, how long does the freaking person work there? Right? Like, when did they work there? Or you take a functional resume format. For those of you who don't know what that is, you take all the functions that you did, all your bullets out of each reversed, you know, chronologically formatted employer, and you group things by function. Well, when you do that, the first thing is, what are they trying to hide? Why can't I know where they did this function? People need context. You know, if you did strategic planning for your 2-person business, that is a hell of a lot different job than doing strategic planning for, you know, a 1,400 department of, you know, IBM. One's not better than the other, but that context tells you the type of strategic planning somebody did, or at least gives you a better idea. So you need the context. The key with this is the thing, like, even with somebody who's been out of work, say 10 years, because maybe they're home with their kids or they cared for a sick family member, I still encourage them to do a reverse chronological format. Because when you start doing these, recruiters, they go boom, 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 boom. They look at 100 minimum, usually, resumes a day. They just go boom, 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 boom. Be creative within the confines of that boom, 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 right? Use good words, make it clear. But when you start moving around where they automatically go and look, it pisses them off. And then they're like, well, what are they trying to hide by doing this shenanigans? And you may not be hiring anything that's bad, but now you've just inserted this, like, well, if they're hiding this, what else are they hiding? For no reason.
I agree with you from a recruiter.
And you're going to walk into the interview or on the Zoom and you're not going to look 32. So it's really not that big of a deal. Just get in, just minimize the stuff that could be, unfairly used. But don't try to start hiding it in these really creatively ridiculous formats that only make the recruiter go, what the hell, I gotta go find what the hell I did this. You know what I mean? Like, don't cause more negative questions with your resume.
Lisa, we have a question in the chat box. You had mentioned yourself, you had gone to hospitality school, you worked in hotels, and you've changed careers and done a couple different things. Well, what if you wanted to go back to a career that you had in an industry from 10, 15 years ago, but it's changed? What would you do to be relevant, to show that you can do this job? Like, how do you get back in? Is there a new technology or a certification?
I mean, if there's any, relevant certifications or classes you can take, obviously I would do those, within reason. I don't know. It depends on the industry. Some of those certifications are thousands and thousands of dollars. You need to be corporately sponsored or something like that. But in general, I would do what you can to try to get into showing that you're really trying to stay up to speed on what's happening currently, whether it's joining an association or taking classes, things like that. I would start networking with either your old network or your current network about getting back in. And depending on, if it's 10, 15 years ago, you can put like a one-liner at the bottom of your second page of your resume or the bottom of the first page, depending on how many years experience you have. And you can put like prior experience or prior relevant experience, IBM IT manager, if you're looking to get back into IT, right? And just put the line. You don't have to put the dates, just put that you did it and you're coming back to it. And maybe you can reference that in the summary that you're looking to, re-enter the industry, but you have recent relevant experience to build upon your prior experience. That's the key. You need to show that you have recent transferable experience.
So if you stayed home for 10 years, 15 years, raising children and taking care of your family, and now you're going back to work, we all know it's harder for a stay-at-home mom to start working again in a professional sense. So do you need to start at that entry level again and work your way up? Or can you use the background and, maybe you're VP of sales and then you stayed home. Can you come back in as VP?
I mean, I think it depends. We've done probably about a couple of dozen, at-home parents, male and female. My husband was a stay-at-home dad for 6 years. So this is a story, like a concept near and dear to my heart. And my biggest gap was 17 years home, and the woman was an editor, and she went back as an editor. And, she did some freelance work here and there. We showcased her volunteer experience, showing, the editing work that she did, for different volunteer groups in town. I had another woman who was a director of communications for a financial services firm, a big name financial services firm. And she was out for 4 years and she went back at the same level, at the VP level. So it's doable. And, I would phrase your volunteer experience in an achievement-like manner. If you were on the PTA, these are some examples we've done, the PTA or the Junior Women's Club or, civic positions or volunteer work, stuff like that. And you can, show that you increased membership, managed a budget or things like that. And that you want to show that you are achievement minded, because that you can't teach somebody, but somebody can teach you what a job is or get you up to speed on a particular function. But showing that, you take that achievement-based mindset, whether you're at the PTA or you're at, the financial services firm, in a communications job, that's all people want to see, is that you are still driven and goal driven, and that you're able to do that. So I think that's the key.
Of what you're saying right now, Christine writes, raising children is a full-time job. I'm sure you can get creative on how the skills you use at home would apply to the office, such as coordinating schedules, budgeting, hiring skilled labor, blah, blah, blah. Is that something that belongs on the resume, or something that you discuss in the interview? And is it only if you volunteer for PTA or you took care of your kids? I mean, you didn't really do that whole networking piece that you are speaking of.
So if you genuinely didn't join, organizations volunteer wise, and I don't want to say only raised your kids, but just for the sake of this conversation, only raised your kids.
Right, exactly.
It's going to be harder. Not going to lie. It's going to be harder, but that is all viable skills that can be communicated, right? I mean, you don't want to start saying like, how much your budget is at home and things like that, right? Because it's just, private, but it's going to be a little harder. But the key is then to network. So the more of a career change you're kind of trying to do, and that's whether you're an at-home parent trying to get back into something, or you're going from, marketing to public relations, right? Or whatever. You're going to have less success on job boards, and you're going to have more success with networking. There's always going to be someone who is going to give a talented stay-at-home parent a shot, because they know how much talent resides there that needs to be tapped. And you're not going to necessarily make it through, the search. You're not going to necessarily rank in a search in someone's ATS system. The people who have more of the keywords are going to rank higher, and they're going to, you may not get viewed, right? If you're lower, because sometimes in those ATS systems, they're looking for particular employers you've worked at. They want to hire from a competitor. So no matter how well you write the resume, if you didn't work at a competitor, you're maybe not going to come up in the search that day, right?
So you're not going to know that from the beginning before you enter it in and apply? I
think, ATS type job postings are good for people who are like looking for linear progression. They're typically currently working, or their most recent job is relevant to the next job they're looking for. Career changers are not necessarily going to get a lot of success going through a job posting type of experience, typically, especially if it's an application function for a very large company, because you're always going to be up against people that have recent direct relevant experience. So they're going to interview those people first, at least I would, so it's not the, you didn't get past the bot. It's nothing like that. It's just, that's how those systems are set up. The recruiters set them up to look for people with certain experiences, certain titles, certain companies, and because they want to hire with people with direct experience or out of competitors. And so no matter how well the resume is written, if you don't have that experience, you may get prioritized second if they're only looking for certain things. And that's not necessarily the best way to recruit. That's a whole nother discussion, but that's just what people do. Right?
I love that suggestion. And I think that is so very important. People that are linear, ATS, applying online might be
better.
Something that you can do. It might be better, but if you are a career changer, if you have been a stay-at-home parent or took care of a sick loved one, or maybe yourself, networking is definitely
going to be better.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
People are always looking for talent that can't be found in traditional ways. And,
exactly.
And so by making yourself known, by talking to people, talking to more people, you will be found in those non-traditional ways, and most of us have a non-traditional background.
Yes.
So
we
that's
have
not
two questions from
say,
Christine.
Yes.
First is, can you tell me what an ATS is? Don't know what an ATS is.
Chuck answered applicant tracking system. It's basically a database. No, it's totally fine. It's a database that companies use to house all of the resumes and applications that they get, because otherwise they would be sitting in every respective recruiter's desk, you know, in their inbox, and nobody would be able to, it centralizes them. So,
Absolutely.
what about
Will the
admitting?
employer not look first at your core competencies of your resume before they look at your work and how long you did it, your experience? And
I mean, they're going to look at that, but then they're going to want to know where you did it and what's the context. They're going to want to know, was it how long ago you did it, where you did it, and like, was it 2 people company? Was it, you know, 2-person company? Was it 5,000 person company? Like, they want to know the context, you know, so just give them all that.
Kelly is asking, what about omitting dates of school graduation only, or including a more recent graduation date, but omitting older graduation dates?
You know, I mean, generally speaking, if you include one, include them all. If you leave one out, leave them all out, you know, because again, you bring attention to like, well, why'd you leave that other one out? You know, like, it's, again, it's just, don't cause negative questions, right? Or minimize the negative questions, at least when you're doing your resume. High school graduation never needs to be included, just to be clear. I think Kelly's only talking about college, but I figured I'd make that clear.
High school is illegal, by the way.
Yes, yeah, there's that too. So small thing. But yeah, so I mean, it shouldn't matter. Some people take 8 years to graduate college. It shouldn't necessarily matter. But you know, again, these it happens, and so yeah, I think I'm trying to go through the list here. How do we do with questions?
I think you touched them in your conversation, as well as other people's questions. Some were piggyback. Yeah, certification is what is important. Having the degree and certifications is what is important, not so much the dates.
So for a few of the at-home parents, I don't want to assume they're mostly women, but I think just I'm seeing only women ask that question. I would also join women's groups, you know, join or attend meetings as a guest, you know, for women's business groups. You know, in New Jersey, there's I mean, it's actually in a few states, but there's a group called BIG, Believe, Inspire, Grow. It's just literally a women's networking group, and you don't have to, it's a lot of women in transition. So I would look for, you know, groups like that, that I would join local civic or attend, local Chamber of Commerce meetings, and just talk to the business owners and see and tell them you're looking for a job, you know, tell them what you're looking for. You know, so you can also make yourself known that way, you know, and it depending on the type of job you're looking for. I mean, you know, I know my kids, when they were looking for retail stuff, like I literally told them, like, go inside the yoga shop, go tell them you're applying for a job, you know, like, maybe if, you know, the local doctor's offices, like, you know, local businesses, like, go in your, you know, your interview garb and just try different ways. If you're not getting an answer electronically, go talk to people, call them, email them, go in person. Obviously, if you're looking, you know, to do a geographic transfer, that's going to be a little bit of a different story. But even network saying, ask your current network saying, I'm looking to move to Atlanta. Who do you know that lives in Atlanta? And start talking to get referred to people who live in Atlanta. And even if you don't know people from Atlanta today, that sort of thing. So just you do have you know, when people say, I think I've exhausted my network. If you have, you know, if you have 100 connections on LinkedIn, I'm going to ask you, when was the last time you talked to them all? Right. And I have a feeling most people on here have more than 100. Right. And then there's the second.
It's not about being on LinkedIn. It's about how active you are.
And then we all have you can do a search. If you are, you know, an IT project manager, look for directors of IT that are second degree connections after you've exhausted your first degree connections, and just start sending messages like, hey, I see we have a few mutual connections. I was just in the spirit of networking. That phrase to me, like, it excuses a lot of things, right? So I would say in the spirit of networking, I would wondering if you could take, 15 to 20 minutes. I'm looking to explore this type of, or learn more about this. You seem to have experience with this. I would, if you're able, I know you're busy, to spare 15, 20 minutes for a brief networking chat, I'd be super grateful. Invitation's always open. Don't feel obligated to reply. That's it.
Chuck has a question. I took him off mute because I just want to make sure that I ask it correctly. So I'll have him ask it. Go ahead, Chuck.
So back to the statement of heritage or pedigree, you were talking about the Big 8 or now the Big 4.
Right.
What's your impression of the phrase in somebody's experience? I worked at Jack Welch's GE.
I mean, I think that's more interview fodder. If you have on your resume that you worked at GE in the 90s, they're going to know it was under Jack Welch, so you don't need to say it. And then that type of statement can be discussed if it's important or relevant to the interviewer, on the interview. But if you are talking to a manager who's, 35 years old and you're pontificating about how you're longing for the days of Jack Welch, that may actually be negative, right? So I think letting your resume speak for this itself based on the years that you worked there will show that you worked, not under Jeff Immelt, so that could be viewed as like being nostalgic, or this is the way we used to do things, it could be viewed negatively, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy is asking, what recourse, if any, do you have if you feel they hired a younger, less experienced candidate because they were an internal candidate, they were better fit, blah, 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 whatever. That's the reason they hired.
I don't think there's any, what's the recourse? You just gotta keep looking. It's, that's just, we're gonna get rejected, people, and somebody with, if the job doesn't need a lot of experience and can be paid less than what we want, like I said, we're all Walmart shoppers. How many of us are volunteering to go pay more to shop local, no matter how, cool it sounds?
So
right? I'm not saying
in
we all
that
don't
case,
do
would
it,
we
but
use different words or less experienced words? Would we definitely lie on our resume and not show a reader how experienced we actually are in order to land a
look,
position?
it's a marketing exercise, right? So it's not about dumbing down, it's about, showing what's relevant. And if showing something that's from 22 years ago is relevant, I'm not saying don't go for it, but if you have something that's equally as relevant that is done, 6 months ago, I'd say go with that.
Is that age discrimination?
I'd say it's marketing. I don't think it's age discrimination.
Just asking.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is just marketing. Things were done differently in most industries and professions 22 years ago. I mean,
this is what the job description calls for. This is what I have. This is the job. This is what I have.
That's it. I mean, even if you waited tables 25 years ago, they had very basic, POS systems, and half the time you were still writing things down. Okay. Believe me, I did too. Now they're, taking the order at the table. You're paying, you're giving, you pay for it at the table, right? Nobody's taking your card anymore. Like, you practically can look at somebody and they're reading your eye prints and they're, paying the bill, right? So like, it's a different job now, even though it's the same job. So it's a balance between, right, the job of a teacher's changed. I mean, and I come from a family of teachers. I have teachers with 35 years of experience who have retired in my family, my aunts. My mom worked for the Board of Ed and as a secretary and to the superintendent. And I have 3 cousins that are teachers that are, 10 to 15 years younger than me. So I got the generations, and it's different, you know, and yeah, they sit around and complain and tell, you know, like what's so different about it. And, you know, and some things are better and some things aren't. And, you know, it's just, but it is a different job, you know? So it's acknowledging that, that's all it is. And how old we are doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There is, you know, value in experience of like highs and lows, and, you know, having been through now as a career person, as a career professional, I've been through now 3 downturns. I've seen people get laid off. I've seen people get rehired. I've seen the ups and downs. There's value in that experience, you know, and you can frame it as somebody who's been through 3 downturns, here's what I've learned.
That sounds like a soft skill.
But I mean, it could be, right? It could be crisis management. I mean, it could be, right? It could be, who knows, right? So resiliency, business redundancy, right? We all learned business redundancy in 2001, being in the New York area. You know, so it still comes back to your experience, right? It still comes back to relevancy. It's not, well, I've been in finance for 30 years. Well, yeah, but if you didn't do any business continuity work, it doesn't matter that you have 30 years experience in finance. It's about the fact that you have business continuity work, right? So talk about the relevant achievements, you know, and bring in the depth of it in terms of the length of your experience when it's relevant. But to just say like, well, I have 30 years of financial experience. Okay, in what capacity? Is it relevant to what I need? Or how does that matter? Like, that's the thing, right? So speak to how it's recent and relevant, and don't default to the fact that you've just been around.
Okay.
You know, I think you're selling yourself short when you do that, to be honest, like, because you do have the goods, you have the actual experience in many cases, and speak to that.
What other questions do we have? Anyone?
One point,
We threw
actually,
a lot at you.
no, I know we did. And one of the other questions was like, I'm having the interview with the 35-year-old person before, or 35 years younger than me, or somebody's ultimately, and think of any time you've hired somebody, right? Again, whether it's for your personal life or at work as a manager, you hire people to make your life easier. Ultimately, everybody wants to hire somebody that is not going to make their life harder. That is, I think, the only human connection we all have, right? And so what can you do to give that person the confidence that you're going to make their life easier, right? And that includes not intimidating them. That includes, you know, not shining steroids and a shiny light on their insecurities, right? And I'm not trying to set up some codependent, you know, dysfunctional situation here, but this is just the reality, right? You know, so it's not about dumbing down or playing up or hiding. It's about showcasing what is relevant. Like you can, that's to me, all those other ways are negatively, it's negative, right? Like it's about dishonesty and hiding. And, you know, like you go to a doctor though, they're not telling you about all the people that they didn't cure, right? Like they're telling you about the people they did. So it's the same kind of thing, right? And you still go to the doctor, right? So, and everybody has negatives, right? Everybody has drawbacks. Everybody has quirks at work. If you get declined for any of those things, not the illegal ones, of course, that's just meaning like it's not the right place for you right now. And that's okay. Don't fill it in as ageism if you do not have the evidence of that.
I love
Except that
those
maybe it's not the right
analogies
place.
that you gave, Lisa, because I always have said the hiring manager, whoever is hiring for your position, it's not like they woke up one day and said, hey, I got nothing to do today, so I think I'm going to hire 2 people. That doesn't happen. It's to make their life easier. And are you the solution to their problem so they can move on with their job? And that's why people like Lisa and lots of other recruiters exist. Lisa's a step above a normal recruiter, but you need to understand that they're helping you with that marketing and the terminology to get through, to get seen, to have that conversation. So make that part of your language as you are making your resume, making your LinkedIn, and having those interview answers. Absolutely. Anything else?
You guys have been great. What else you have?
Thank you for your positive comments, Christine.
Yes.
You've been very active in our chat, so I do appreciate that. Great, great comments.
Do you guys ever call on people who haven't asked a question, or is that frowned upon?
You know what? I have not, because some people don't like to
Everybody
be
just
put on
panics.
the spot. They're nervous and
All the quiet people just panicked.
yes, exactly. Like, hey, you.
I won't do that.
Some
I just
people
figured
like
I'd
to
ask.
be that fly in the wall and listen in and collect that
It's all good.
information.
It's all good.
Oh,
I'll
I
ask
just
the
want everybody to
question.
feel included. That's all. So
I know, can you hear me?
yes, Gail, hi.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, the market has changed, and say these companies can't even find anybody, if you get maybe a small company or something. So is it better just to go to a small company? I know someone yesterday, they got the job on the interview, because, you have to, how do you find a desperate company where you can find a job real easy? And
So
it doesn't even have to be a computer job,
what do you want? What are you looking to do, Gail?
Well, I could do flower arranging, something I enjoy, something I feel like, I can work for a company, but it seems like around here in this area, it's all seasonal. You could be qualified for your 401k, and they won't hire it. They won't keep anybody more than 2 years. You're like a dime a dozen. It's like if you
So,
don't
I
have
mean,
your own business, it's like, goodbye, we can find someone cheaper, or, it's too slow right now. That's what I've found after years and years of working.
so
So I might as well just find something I like.
there are a lot of professions that have become seasonal, or they have become more contract or freelance based. And while sometimes it's a matter of accepting it and then just trying to keep a few things going, which I know isn't an ideal thing, but it's just sometimes accepting it as it is. I mean, one cool thing about flower arranging is, and I have a cousin who's a flower, works for florist, but walk in and volunteer to work for an hour, and I'm not saying to do it for a whole day and not get paid, but say, look, I know I would, I'm walk in with a resume, or if you have pictures of work you've done, if you've bought flowers at the supermarket and arranged them yourself or something like that, and like show evidence of your work, and print them out and put them in a binder and say, this is some of the work that I've done. And if you need seasonal help, or if you need, busy season help, here's my name, here's my card, that sort of thing. And you may get a call because they're busy and then they want to keep you on. So it's about like the initiative and the hustling of it. And I think I would literally like go on the internet, and I would print out all the florist shops, and I'd start driving around and walking around with my little book with my pictures. And I'd go to funeral homes. If that doesn't freak you out, might freak me out, that's just me. But they obviously need people. I would look at the back of I'm just trying to think who sells, like, I would look at wedding planners. I would look at like everyone that deals with flowers, right? I would just Google it, and I'd try to make a list of like 10, to go to 10 a day. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, honey. Gail, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
I was thinking of like going maybe the companies or hotels that want to display.
Yeah, the hotels. Somebody mentioned
myself at home and give it to them. Yeah, hotels.
Yeah,
Someone put in the chat box grocery stores.
Yeah, the grocery stores. Like I would literally start going on, like, when you start, and sometimes you think of something and then you start to see everything through that filter. I would do that, I would just start looking around, right? I didn't think of the hotels, catering halls that are now starting to open up again. Businesses, the big corporate buildings, they all have plants, you know, if that's like your shtick, like the horticultural type, I would look for horticultural jobs. You know, obviously different than plants, if, you know, but that's something to do. So, but I would just start looking, and that's to me the kind of job you can literally walk in. And not every place is going to be like that, or every job search is going to be like that. But sometimes those physical jobs, you can like go walk in, and that's half the battle. They just see that you're like a human being, and, you know, like you have initiative and you're there and you're showing pictures of your work. That's initiative. They'll train you then, maybe even sometimes based on the way they want to do it versus your style. But I would just literally go buy some flowers if you can, arrange them in your own way, take pictures, and like go offer to work for a couple hours to show what you do.
Gail, there's a lot of suggestions. Thank you so much from everyone attending.
Yeah, copy and paste the
chat.
copy
And paste this Zoom, because there's a lot of the chat box. There's a lot of great suggestions in there. Allison has a question. Allison Page, go ahead.
Hi, Lisa, and both
Hi.
of you. Not necessarily a question, but I do have a suggestion. Personally, I went on a job fair yesterday, and the young you were giving her some places that she could perhaps go seek jobs or get employment. One of them, for example, I went to a job fair yesterday. It was great. I'm over 50, but I came prepared with my resume.
Good.
I came prepared with a positive attitude and energy. And when I went to the vendors going around, I just happened to see something I thought that would appeal to me. I went over to the young lady, gave her my resume, and just like that, she said, "Would you like to be interviewed now?" I said, "Well, how about me going around first, then I'll come back." But she said, "I'll give you an hour and make sure you be back here at 11:45.
Good.
So I made my rounds. I got familiar with the vendors, but I was focused. I didn't go to each and every one, but I knew what I wanted, and
Good.
I seeked out. So I went back to her. We had a great interview. She asked me questions. I was prepared. I knew right away. And then I asked her at one point, well, and like you said, in a very humorous way, "Did you read my resume?" And I knew, because you are correct, and I appreciate this because I've been doing a lot and reading. So like I said, I was prepared, but she was focused on, she had keywords, but I was in tune to her. So like I said, I keep using the word preparation, came with a positive attitude, with the energy. And guess what? And she said she will call me back, but regardless of whether she calls me back or not, guess what? Just like that. So, and also it's the way you
Thank you,
present.
Allison. We're going to take a few more people before
Good
we
job,
have
Allison.
to
I'm rooting
finish
for
the
you.
day. Let's see. We have, what if you're really sick from the virus for a decent amount of time? I was told not to bring up that I was sick. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know, you know, like, I don't know how many months, and first of all, I'm happy you're better, first and foremost. So that's number one. I just have a hard time with hiding things, right? Like it's one thing if you were sick for a week, right? Now you can sort of sweep, but if you were sick for 5 months, God forbid, and you know, now you're trying to explain a 5-month gap or something. This is where people have to gut check themselves, right? Like some people are good at coming up with a reason that sort of glosses over things and they don't feel like they're lying, right? Other people, you know, they can't not tell the absolute truth, like, because it sits poorly with them. And then the rest of the interview, they're like, you know, scrambling. So this is one of those gut checks. You have to come up with, in my opinion, a diplomatically honest answer that doesn't come across like you're, you know, using the interview as therapy, right? So I don't think, I mean, you were sick. I mean, it was a pandemic. It happens, right? Like, I mean, anyone that has a problem with that, you got to wonder how forgiving of an employer they're going to be if you're there, right? So I think just saying like, you know, I had COVID for a while and now I'm back, I'm better, blah, blah, blah. Like if it took like a 6-month period of time, or something like that, shows your resilience, shows you're, ready to go. I would focus then on other projects you've done since getting better. Yeah, like there's a lot of people in the same situation. Like, it may not even come up, because I'll be honest with you, when having gone through now 3 economic cycles and this one having the health component to it, I could tell you that right after I ran a downtown Wall Street recruiting office during 9/11, and for the a year and a half after that, if you weren't working from like September 2001 to for the next 6 months or a year, like people just assumed it was because of 9/11. They didn't even, like, nobody even asked you anymore, like, why you're not working. They're just like, okay, what are you looking for? And like, because everybody didn't want to talk about it anymore, right? And so if you're not working now for like a 6-month period during 2021, right? I mean, it's people just assume it's pandemic related, right?
Sure.
They may not even ask you. I would have something prepared that makes you like shoulders back, head held high. Well, this is what happened. And in a way that makes you comfortable, that doesn't jeopardize your stance or your gait for the rest of the interview, because now you feel like you're lying,
I agree.
So there is the person who's telling you not to bring it up is because their heart's in the right place, right? You shouldn't have to talk about health things on the interview, or there's going to be the people who are going to wonder, now, do you have COVID, long-term COVID? Are you going to be here all, because again, it's information people should not be using to factor into a hiring decision, right? So that person's giving you that advice from their heart's in the right place, right? But, I don't know you, and I can't even remember your name because it scrolled up, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who asked the question. I think it was Robert, I'm not sure. You have to, your temperament for, glazing over the truth a little bit, right? So you have to answer in a way that will keep you really peppy and honest on the interview, and not feel like you're now starting to hide things. That feeling of hiding things on an interview is one that everybody really should avoid, because it affects your demeanor on the interview, and it gives the recruiter the vibe that, like, well, what else are they not telling me, or something's not right. You want to just be honest, diplomatically, vulnerably honest.
Lisa is asking a question that kind of spins off of that. I'm looking for a remote job, but they seem very hard to find. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have any suggestions on how to find a remote opportunity?
Whatever position you're looking for, if you're searching like job boards and stuff like that, I would add the word remote or virtual to it and look for the jobs that are advertising that way. In the news, there's companies that are declaring that they're not going back, or, I would contact people directly based on, news that you're finding. If you see evidence in job boards that companies are doing a lot of remote positions, but you don't see a job for you, I would, whatever the title is of a job that you would report to, I would go look for that person. I would search for the person who you might report to at a particular target company, and knowing that there's evidence of remote work there at the company, because you see it in positions elsewhere in the company, I would just start marketing yourself directly to people and don't wait for a job opening. That's networking in many ways, right? So, sort of where there's smoke, where there's fire. Where there's smoke, there's fire. If you see remote work being advertised at certain companies, which is not in your field or what you do, just look for the people that would oversee those positions and start marketing yourself directly and just see what happens.
Karen has a question. 45 seconds or less.
Quick question. It's a resume question. How are you? I appreciate your straight shooter answering these questions. On a resume, have a severance package that was like 18 months. Do I end my date from my previous company when my severance was done, or when I was downsized with the entire department? In honesty, you know what I mean?
If generally speaking, because I think I understand, I know I understand the question, I just don't know if I understand the specifics. If you were paid every month, week, whatever the pay cycle is,
Yep.
for 18 months, you're technically still on the payroll.
Right.
You could say that you were there until the last day of your paycheck.
Right.
Great.
You received a lump sum that covered 18 months.
No, it
I
was
would-
not weekly.
All right, so
Great.
weekly, you could say that, right?
Yes.
But be prepared to answer the question, like what you've been doing then in that job for 18 months. So if you're, again, it goes
Right.
back to, if you're pretending, you know, and then whatever you pretend, you gotta like, if you get the job, now you gotta maintain that when you get the job, right? So you
Right.
can't make it sound like you're leading all these projects, and then once you get the job, 2 months in, you're out for drinks with people, and you're like, yeah, I was so lucky, I got an 18-month severance package. You're gonna be like, lady, I thought you ran the blah, 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 right? So like, you gotta come up with the answer that, you know,
Keep-
tells the truth, but
Yep.
that's all. Because again, you gotta feel good.
Yep.
And then assuming you get the job, you gotta maintain the story on the job. I can't lie, not, I swear to God, I can't lie, not necessarily because it's the right thing to do, although believe me, I don't do it because it's the right thing to do. I can't lie because I can't keep track of all this crap, you know, like it's just better to
That's
tell the truth.
right.
It's
There
just
you go.
easier.
Yes.
You just have to do it in a very diplomatic, vulnerable, you know, human way.
Right.
You know,
And
you
being
don't want to use it as
downsized.
therapy, right? You don't want to
Yep.
use it as therapy that you're telling such the truth that it's like way too much information,
Yep.
but do it in a way that's diplomatically vulnerable,
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
and then you're a human being and people hire
Exactly.
human beings, right? So.
And
that's
it's
a great
not
question.
an embarrassment to say
And
you were
thank
let
you.
go.
Right. I mean,
Downsized. I mean, it's part of the back and forth too, if you have
Right.
to discuss
Exactly.
it. Right. Okay.
and
Just
frankly,
be
it sends
prepared
the
to
message.
say why you think that it happened. And again, COVID is an excuse for 2 years for everyone. So
Yeah.
you have that, no one wants to address that. And just like Lisa said, like, we don't want to talk about it. We're done. We want to move on. We want to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
get better. And so a lot of times they'll gloss over that. And,
Yeah, and you know, so you can say I was really blessed. I know not everyone got what I got during that
Oh,
during
fortunate,
that
yes.
situation. So I'm grateful, I'm blessed, and you know, I'm looking forward to, you know, it gave me time to really figure out what I want to do, and this is what I want to do.
yes.
You know, so now you're not coming from a place of, you know, just taking the job to take the job, right?
Yes.
So that's, you can spin that in that way.
Yes. Well, our time is up for today, and we had some really great questions come in. Thank you so much to our speaker and our guest, Lisa Rangel, who is
Thank you for
from,
having me.
again, Chameleon Resumes, and she'll reach out to you. I will provide your email to her, one and done, so that she can reach out in case you forget about a question. Oh my gosh, I forgot to ask that. And not a problem, you can do that, and she'll be happy to answer that for you. I will also include the URL, so if you would like to view this recording once again, happy to do that as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. And please, unfortunately, you got to wear those winter coats, stay warm, and spring is around the corner, according to the groundhog. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Take
everyone. for
care.
the great questions.
Appreciate you joining us
Bye,
today.
thanks a lot.
Take
And
care.
next time we'll talk with Ed, and he will tell us all about LinkedIn and what recruiters are looking for. So you will get the message about that. All right. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Take care.